welcome everyone. We'd like to introduce you to Ronnie Scruweller, founder of UTV. Thank you for being here.
Thank you. And if you've got a long question, I'll give a short answer.
Hello, welcome to the Bay Area. I'm Kavita from Sitare TV and Times Now. My question is directed towards Swadesh Foundation. Talk about that foundation and what work you're trying to do and achieve.
So actually, we had, for the last 10 to 15 years, been active in rural Maharashtra, which is a state near Mumbai, doing a lot with villages that were acute in water shortages. I think in the last 1 year we decided what is it that we really want to do with Swadesh to take it to the next level. Met a lot of people, and the sum and substance of that was overall in a country where 70% is still in rural India, the key was how do we look at creating a much larger impact. We therefore felt the first need was that it needed to be 360 degrees, and by that we needed to go in there to work with health, with education, with water, and I use water as a benchmark because that is the core of either health problems or many other situations, but most important, end with livelihood. So really when you're liberating people and permanently empowering them, that can only happen when they've got their ability to earn their own keep and their own livelihood and don't need donations and don't need philanthropy. So we've set ourselves a goal. The second part is that when we decided on that, we said, how do we do this without necessarily looking at scale? Because only when you get to a certain level of scale can you create a model that others can follow. So that's what we've really done. We've adopted and plan to look at about 1 million people in one state right now, because wherever you go, you'll find a need for that. But to look at it in a sort of a round-ended manner and end with empowerment from livelihood. It's an ambitious task. I think the key part and the differentiator for us is that in 5 years we want to empower and leave. That means permanent change, and I think that's very new for India. And I think the second one is that we're an execution foundation, which means that we will not just cut the check, but we want to build our own teams and build an organization that can actually make that difference.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Ronnie, on stage, you mentioned Jugaad, which I think to a Westerner can sort of mean adaptability. Can you give me an example in your career when you had to think on your toes and throw something together in that way?
That's about 7 times a day, every day, for the last many, many years. Because I think when you're in a sort of dynamic market like India, you've got to be able to have adaptability as a core. I think you've got to be able to look at the long term with the short term. And I think from that perspective, you make your best strategic plans and you can't keep changing your mind about them. But the adaptability is very, very strong. I think Jugaad is a combination of that adaptability and flexibility, but it's also evolving an element where you are creating something within the ecosystem that can afford that. So I think affordability is also very important, finding the right cost solutions and the flexibility to do that. Because I think for the next consumption story to emerge, not just in Middle America, but in India and most of the emerging markets, it's going to be what you're going to be able to offer to them in terms of products and services at the right cost. And therefore you will find a lot of global organizations actually looking at these concepts in more of the markets outside of the sort of Western markets where they need to offer the same product but at a different price threshold.
Hi, this is Mahesh Pakala from TV Asia, India's US oldest Indian TV channel.
Yes, we've done a lot of work and actually done a lot of our television program for the last 10 years with you also. Yeah.
All right.
Very familiar
great.
with TV Asia.
So my question is this, like we're talking about the ecosystem for entrepreneurs. One of the key ingredients of the ecosystem is the political infrastructure. In India, how do you think we can improve the political infrastructure in India?
Well, there are two aspects. I think infrastructure requires a lot of investment. So if I was the Prime Minister, I'd look at it very differently than the present Prime Minister. But I think the area for us is really the political will and the mandate. Because we have 4 and 5 year terms, and I think most governments have 4-year, 5-year terms, people start looking at what they can create over the first and 2 years because they can get into re-election. And I think that's a flawed system in democracy sometimes for all the other good things that happen there. And that kind of gets you to take short-term decisions. The second one is actually privatization versus government control is something that I think India has to wake up to. And I think in some manners we're sort of waking up to that. But we have been so embedded for 45 out of our 60 odd years of independence with a socialistic norm that to break through that and look at it in a very capitalistic point of view, which reeks also of greed and many of the other things that come out, which are negative on capitalism. But I think there are some good points of that. If you balance those two, you'll be able to come up with. But at the end of the day, you need a political leadership that can take strong decisions and stand by them.
So just to add to that, in the U.S., for example, if any entrepreneur, any person is interested in standing for elections, he's treated like a political. It's like a IP, like a startup, and people invest. Individuals invest capital and make that individual successful to be a successful politician, in which basically everybody is invested in the kind of the citizens and everybody. How can we change that fabric?
You know, in a selective manner, it's happening in India. So when you do have that, and if somebody from young India wants to do that, and if he says, you know, I want to get all donations by check, and I want to look at this in a very formal manner, there is a possibility, there's a solution for that. The Election Commission in India supports that. So it's not that that infrastructure is not there. People don't avail of it. But it would be tough, and it will be challenging, and people might lose. But I think, you know, if it's not the first 4 years, it has to be the next 4 years. So it's not going to change overnight. But the people who stay the course and do it over 2 or 3 terms, frustrating as it may be, that's where we'll really see the success.
Thanks, Rob.
Thanks.
This is Ritu from Rediff.com. You talked about you have too much hope for 2014 election, upcoming election in India, especially on.
Well, I'm just an optimist, so I have a lot of hope all round.
Related to youth, you said we are looking forward to that.
Yeah.
To elaborate on that, please.
Yeah,
Because,
I mean, I think.
The other candidate for the prime minister is youth and would be prime minister if he's elected. You understand?
I don't know exactly who you're referring to, but I'm not going to ask the question, and that's perfectly fine. I think the question here remains that over the last 4 years, a lot of the youth have been a lot more active and a lot more aware. They're also quite clear that overall leadership is something that they need to get inspired with. There are going to be 150 million people, youth, coming out of universities over the next 10 years. They're going to find it very difficult to find jobs. So now they need to understand that they need to start taking control of their own destiny in their own hands. And therefore, they're not going to be able to just sit back and start tweeting complaints. They have to start tweeting solutions.
Hi, I'm Jaya with Time Media. Quick question. I know that we heard that you had a great, first of all, keynote. And you talked about the rural India, that you and your wife are really into supporting India's rural areas, which maybe have not been brought up as much as possible. We talk a lot about what's happening with the middle class and the metros, but there's a big divide, and you have plans to do something about that. Can you elaborate on what those plans are?
I'm not quite sure what exactly the question is. If you can be a little bit more accurate, there is a divide anywhere. There's a divide between rich and poor. There's a divide between educated and non-educated. It doesn't have to be in an emerging market. It could be in the Western world. It could be in the number one economy of the world. There'll always be some divide.
So your wife and you are going to focus on helping India's rural areas. Can you elaborate on that? Actually, I wasn't there at the keynote, so
Sure. I think I already covered that once, maybe, so I won't be that repetitive on that. And I think helping is actually the wrong word, because it's a mandate. It's something that we will facilitate. We will create an infrastructure. When you're doing that, I think the idea is for you to be a catalyst. And I think that's what we want to be as we go forward, to bring about permanent change. I think the focus for us is being a catalyst, being empowering people to find permanent change in that, and our ability to be able to create that with their involvement.
A different question. So from UTV, it is now Disney UTV. So what has the change been like for you?
It's been a great change, because I mean, Disney is one of the most admired companies in the world. It's a fantastic organization. I've not seen anyone with that kind of deep-seated creativity, the ability to take that creativity into franchises worldwide and create magic for so many people. I think that in itself is such a learning experience and a humbling experience for everyone who's coming into the family of the Walt Disney Company, to be able to take creativity to the next level. So I think it'll be a phenomenal learning lessons for everyone in India, and a tremendous amount of value addition that a global corporation like that will do for just entertainment, media, and content in India.
So the 5-year plan for your company now?
That's confidential.
Okay. You could tell me, but then you have to kill me.
Thank you very much, everyone.
Lovely. Thank you very much.